My mother tried to fatten me up, poisoned my drinks, robbed me, and brought a fake doctor to gaslight me, all while not realizing that she had met her match, and the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. No one wants to admit it, but growing up as an only child with a single mom is hard. Up until I was 14, she put me on a diet of the most high-calorie foods she could find: frozen nuggets, burgers, Pop-Tarts, everything. I ended up spending my 14th birthday as a 160-pound, 5'2" girl. Meanwhile, my mom was 95 pounds and the same height as me, because her diet consisted of the healthiest foods she could find: salads, avocados, shrimp, all organic. But other than that, she was an angel. The type of mom to drive an hour out of town to find the birthday cake I wanted, to hand sew a Halloween costume for my school fair. At least she was, until I got my weight down to 105 pounds. You see, up until this point, I had been covering myself with the baggiest clothes I could find, including in front of my mom. You could barely even tell what I looked like. But when I saw the lower numbers on the scale, my eyes brightened, and I finally got to wear my motivation clothes I bought that would only fit me once I lost weight. I practically tripped running down the stairs. I was so excited to share the news with my mom. I always had this image of me telling her, us jumping up and down together and getting a big hug. But as soon as she saw me, her eyes widened with shock. I swear I saw a look of disgust flash over her face. I stood there awkwardly, before quietly announcing that I had lost 45 pounds. That's when my mom, the once most encouraging, kind, supportive woman to ever exist, said, "Just don't let it get to your head," before handing me a plate of toaster waffles drowned in syrup and butter. Tears stung my eyes, and I told myself that she must be having an off day. But as the days went on, it got even worse. She started loading up my plate with double the amount of food, and when I refused to finish, she threatened to tell my school that I never did my own homework, and I had been copying my friends the whole time. But she never followed through. Nothing big really happened after that, just constant tension, silent treatment, until my 17th birthday. And since it was my first time having friends over, I asked my mom if I could have a Halloween-themed birthday party. "Yes, honey, let me make the birthday cake, I insist." It was the first time she had smiled at me in months. I really thought her reign of jealousy was finally over. I was so naive. I dressed up as Snow White, complete with a blue corset and yellow skirt. I was so excited to wear it that I put it on before everyone had arrived. I wanted to surprise my mom, to show her she had the beautiful daughter I thought she always wanted. But as I snuck into the kitchen, I saw something so shocking my heart almost grew legs and ran out of my chest. There was a huge container of powder in her hands that she was pouring directly into the batter. It was a mass gainer, the kind that adds 700 calories per scoop. I screamed. She turned around and the powder went everywhere. Her face went red. She even looked a little ashamed, but I didn't care. To me, my birthday had been ruined, but I didn't react. I just smiled and joked about how I'm glad she's helping me to fatten up. My mom thought she had raised a pushover, a girl who couldn't fight back, but she was wrong, and I was going to make sure of it. The party went ahead as planned. Mom quickly wiped up the evidence and claimed she was just adding protein to make the cake healthier. She threw together a new cake while I greeted my guests, and I made damn sure not to eat a single bite of anything she made that day. My friends were cool. We played Halloween games, took a ton of pictures, and I actually had fun despite knowing what had just happened. But every time I looked at my mom smiling and playing the perfect host, I felt sick to my stomach. That night, after everyone left, I sat in my room planning. My mom thought she had raised a pushover who couldn't fight back. She had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I went to the bathroom scale and made a big show of weighing myself while Mom was nearby. I gasped dramatically and called her in. "Mom, look, I've gained 5 pounds since yesterday." Her eyes lit up with this weird satisfaction that made my skin crawl. "Oh, honey, it's probably just water weight," she said. But I could tell she was pleased. This confirmed everything. She wanted me to be overweight again. I started playing along with her game, but with my own twist. I'd wait until she was watching, then grab handfuls of chips or cookies, telling her how starving I was. Then I'd take the food to my room or bathroom and flush it or throw it away. I'd come back for more, patting my stomach and talking about how good it was. Meanwhile, I started keeping a detailed journal of everything. Every comment she made about my body, every time she tried to force food on me, every special dessert she insisted on making. I took pictures of the ridiculously oversized portions she served me compared to her own plate. I also got sneaky with my workouts. I told Mom I was joining study groups after school, but really I was hitting the school gym. One day while cleaning my room, I found a bunch of old family photo albums. I started looking through them, curious about what Mom looked like when she was my age. That's when I discovered something weird. In all her high school photos, my mom was heavy, like heavier than I had ever been. In her senior portrait, she looked nothing like the thin woman who raised me. I dug deeper and found pictures of her with a guy who looked a lot like me. Must have been my dad. In those photos, she was still heavy, and she looked happy. Then the photos stopped for a few years, and when they picked up again, she was suddenly skinny and alone with baby me. Something clicked. This wasn't just about me. This was about her own issues with weight. I remembered comments she'd make over the years about not wanting me to suffer like she did, but I always thought she meant financially since we struggled sometimes. I decided to try a different approach. The next day at breakfast, I casually mentioned finding the old photos. "Mom, you looked so happy in those pictures with Dad. What happened between you two?" She froze with her coffee cup halfway to her mouth. I thought she might get angry, but instead, she looked sad. "Your father left me when I was pregnant with you. He said he didn't want to be tied down to a fat girl and her baby." That hit me like a truck. I had never heard the real story about my dad before. She always gave vague answers about him not being ready for a family. "Is that why you lost all the weight?" I asked carefully. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I promised myself no one would ever have a reason to leave me again. But why make me eat differently? Why try to keep me heavy? My mom's eyes filled with tears. I just wanted to protect you. Boys can be so cruel about weight. I thought if you were heavy, they wouldn't notice you, wouldn't hurt you like your father hurt me. I sat there stunned. Her logic was completely twisted, but in some weird way, I could almost see how her trauma had warped her thinking. Almost. Mom, you can't protect me by making me unhealthy, I said gently, and now I feel like I can't trust you around my food. She started crying harder. I thought maybe this breakthrough would change things. Maybe now that everything was out in the open, she'd stop the sabotage. I was wrong. The conversation with my mom about my dad should have been a turning point. Like in all those therapy TikToks where people have these big emotional breakthroughs and everything changes. Spoiler alert, that's not what happened. The very next day, I noticed something weird about my orange juice at breakfast. It tasted off. Not spoiled, just different. Sweeter maybe? I took another sip and realized my mom was watching me intently from across the table. That's when it clicked. Did you put something in this? I asked, pushing the glass away. Just a little honey to sweeten it up. I know you like sweet things, she replied, looking completely innocent. I dumped the rest down the sink when she wasn't looking. Later that day, I searched through our pantry and found a half-empty bottle of corn syrup hidden behind her organic tea collection. Great! Now she was literally spiking my drinks with extra calories. That weekend, she insisted on making my favorite lasagna, which somehow had twice as much cheese as usual. When I only took a small portion, she actually teared up. I spent hours making this special for you, she said sadly. The guilt trip was real. I felt like I was trapped in some bizarre psychological warfare. My own mother was basically trying to force feed me like some twisted version of Hansel and Gretel. Every day became a new battle around food. I needed help dealing with this mess. So I turned to Reddit, of course. I posted my situation on r/relationships and immediately got flooded with replies. Most people were horrified, calling it abuse and telling me to move out ASAP. Easy for them to say. I was still in high school with no money. But one comment from a user named Health Coach Linda really stood out. She suggested that instead of fighting my mom directly, I should try enlisting an ally, preferably a family member my mom respected who could help talk some sense into her. I thought about it for a while. The only person who might fit that description was my Aunt Trisha, my mom's older sister. They weren't super close, but my mom definitely respected her opinion. Aunt Trisha lived about 2 hours away and always sent me birthday cards with $50 checks. We weren't close, but she seemed normal enough. I found her number in my mom's address book and nervously dialed it the next day while mom was at work. When she answered, I almost hung up, but I forced myself to explain the situation. Your mother's doing what? Aunt Trisha's voice practically exploded through the phone after I finished explaining. She was silent for a moment, then said, I'm coming over this weekend. Don't tell your mom I'm coming. That Friday evening, we heard a car pull into our driveway. Mom wasn't expecting anyone, so she peeked through the curtains and her face went white. Trisha? What's she doing here? She muttered. Aunt Trisha barely waited for mom to open the door before barging in. We need to talk, Diane, she announced, dropping her overnight bag in the hallway. Family dinner, all three of us. Now, I'd never seen my mom so flustered. She kept stammering excuses about not having enough food prepared, but Aunt Trisha just rolled her eyes and started rummaging through our fridge herself. During dinner, Aunt Trisha waited until we were all seated before saying, So Diane, your daughter tells me you've been trying to fatten her up. Care to explain what the hell that's about? My mom's fork clattered onto her plate. She shot me a look of pure betrayal that made me want to disappear into the floor. I don't know what she told you, but I'm just trying to make sure she's eating enough. Teenagers these days are obsessed with being skinny. Cut the crap, Aunt Trisha said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out old photographs, pictures of my mom as a teenager. Remember how dad used to comment on your weight? Remember how mom put you on those awful crash diets? You're doing the same thing to your daughter, just in reverse. I sat there in shock as they argued about family history I'd never heard before. Apparently, my grandparents had been pretty terrible about my mom's weight growing up. My grandfather would make comments at dinner, and my grandmother kept putting her on these extreme diets that never worked. You hated them for it, Aunt Trisha said softly, and now you're doing something just as harmful to your own daughter. For a moment, I thought we were having another breakthrough. My mom's eyes filled with tears, and she looked genuinely remorseful. But then she stood up suddenly, knocking her chair backward. This is different. I'm protecting her. By making her unhealthy? By betraying her trust? That's not protection, Diane. That's control. My mom stormed out of the room, slamming her bedroom door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. Aunt Trisha sighed and turned to me. Well, that went about as well as expected. She ended up staying the entire weekend. My mom barely left her room except to go to work on Saturday. When she did come out, she wouldn't look at either of us. By Sunday afternoon, Aunt Trisha had to leave. She hugged me tightly at the door. I'm sorry I couldn't fix this, she whispered, but I want you to have this. She pressed a prepaid credit card into my hand. There's $500 on it, emergency fund, and call me anytime, day or night. I felt a surge of gratitude but also panic as I watched her car pull away. My mom emerged from her bedroom about 10 minutes later. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, but there was something else there too, a hardness I hadn't seen before. Trisha always was a drama queen, she said flatly, always trying to turn people against me. The next few weeks were the most stressful of my life. My mom stopped the obvious food tampering, but she started something way worse, psychological warfare. She'd leave women's fitness magazines around the house, open to articles about eating disorders. She'd make comments whenever I skipped dessert, like, I hope you're not developing an unhealthy relationship with food. The gaslighting was driving me insane. I'd catch her adding butter to my portion when she thought I wasn't looking, then she'd deny it completely. "You're getting paranoid, honey. Maybe we should talk to someone about that." I started keeping all my own food in a plastic bin in my closet. Protein bars, apples, nuts, stuff that wouldn't spoil. I'd pretend to eat her food, then throw it away when she wasn't looking. It felt wasteful, but I was desperate. One night I came home late from studying at the library to find Mom sitting in the kitchen with a middle-aged woman I'd never seen before. They both looked up when I walked in. "Honey, this is Dr. Reynolds," Mom said sweetly. "She's a nutritionist who specializes in teenage eating disorders." My stomach dropped. "I don't have an eating disorder." Dr. Reynolds smiled gently. "Why don't we chat for a bit? Your mother is concerned about some of your eating habits." I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat down and listened as this woman, who I later found out wasn't even a real doctor but some holistic nutrition coach my mom found online, lectured me about nourishing my body and intuitive eating, all while my mom nodded along with this concerned look on her face. After the fake doctor left, I confronted my mom. "What was that about?" "I'm worried about you," she said with fake sincerity. "You're hiding food, skipping meals. These are warning signs. The only reason I'm doing that is because you keep trying to make me fat again," I blurted out. Her expression darkened. "See? This obsession with weight isn't healthy. Dr. Reynolds thinks you might need more intensive help." A chill ran down my spine. Was she threatening to send me to some kind of treatment center? Could she even do that? I didn't wait to find out. That night, I texted Aunt Tricia. "Things getting worse. Mom bringing in fake doctors now." The next morning, I decided to change tactics. Fighting my mom directly wasn't working. I needed to be smarter, so I pretended to have a change of heart. "Mom," I said at breakfast, pushing my cereal around, "maybe you're right. I think I have been a little obsessive about food lately." The look of triumph on her face was almost worth the lie. Almost. "Oh, sweetie, I'm so glad you realized that," she said, immediately putting 2 Pop-Tarts in the toaster. "We'll get through this together." For the next week, I pretended to go along with everything. I ate the massive portions she served, smiled through her nutrition lessons, even agreed when she suggested I stop exercising so much. But as soon as she wasn't looking, I'd be on my phone, researching and making plans. I found out that in our state, I couldn't legally move out until 18 without parental consent. But I was turning 18 in just 4 months. I needed to start preparing. I applied for every scholarship I could find for college, focusing on schools at least 2 states away. I started selling clothes I didn't wear anymore on Poshmark for extra cash. I even picked up a weekend job at the mall, telling my mom it was a teen social skills group, recommended by school. My friend Zoe was the only person at school who knew the full story for a long time. She helped me set up a separate bank account where I could deposit my paychecks without my mom knowing. By my estimation, I'd have almost $2,000 saved by graduation, plus Aunt Tricia's emergency card. Then one afternoon, disaster struck. I came home early from social skills group, actually my mall job, because I had a migraine. The house was supposed to be empty. Mom always went grocery shopping on Saturday afternoons. But as I walked upstairs to my bedroom, I heard rustling coming from inside. I pushed open the door to find my mom going through my closet, the bin of food supplies dumped out on the floor. She was holding my bank statements. "What is all this?" she demanded, waving the papers. "You're working at Pretzel World? And what's this bank account I don't know about?" My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. "Mom, I can explain. You're planning to leave," she said, her voice eerily calm. "You're hiding money and food and making secret plans." I didn't deny it. What was the point? She'd found everything. "I'm almost 18, I said quietly. "I need to start being independent." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Independent? You're still a child. You can't even make healthy food choices without me." That night, my mom took my phone, my laptop, even my library card. "Until you can prove you're making healthy choices, these are off limits," she announced. She also informed me that she'd called Pretzel World and told them I had to quit for health reasons. I felt completely trapped. No phone, no computer, no job, no way to contact anyone. She even started driving me to and from school, waiting in the parking lot to make sure I actually went inside. For 3 days, I went through the motions like a zombie. I ate whatever she gave me, nodded at her lectures, and tried to figure out a new plan. The weight of the situation felt crushing. On the 4th day, my English teacher, Ms. Garcia, held me back after class. "Everything okay, Amber? You seem not yourself lately." Something in her kind expression broke me. I started crying right there in the classroom. Between sobs, I told her everything. The food tampering, the control, the isolation. Ms. Garcia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she handed me some tissues and said, "This isn't normal or healthy parenting, Amber. There are resources that can help." She let me use her classroom phone to call Aunt Tricia during lunch. When I explained what happened, Aunt Tricia was furious. "This has gone too far. I'm calling a family meeting. Your grandmother needs to hear about this." Grandmother? I barely knew my grandmother. She lived in Florida and sent me $25 gift cards at Christmas. According to Mom, they weren't close because Grandma was judgmental. Now I understood why. 2 excruciating days later, my grandmother's Lincoln Town car pulled into our driveway, followed by Aunt Tricia's SUV. I watched from my bedroom window as the 2 women marched up to our front door like an intervention squad. My mom completely fell apart when she saw her mother. It was like watching someone transform from a controlling adult into a defensive teenager in seconds flat. "Mother, this isn't a good time," she stammered. Grandma Margaret wasn't having it. She was a tiny woman, maybe 5 feet tall, but she had this presence that filled the room. "Diane Marie, you open this door right now, or I swear to God I will call every neighbor on this street to witness this." The family showdown that followed was both horrible and vindicating. We all sat in the living room while Aunt Tricia outlined everything I'd told her, with me filling in details when asked. Mom kept trying to interrupt with her version, that I was developing an eating disorder, that I was paranoid, that she was just trying to help. Grandma Margaret finally held up her hand, silencing everyone. "Diane, do you remember what you said to me when you were 17? You said if you ever had a daughter, you would never do to her what I did to you." My mom's face crumpled. "This is different." "No, it's not. It's worse. I controlled your food because that's what mothers did in my generation. We didn't know better, but you're doing it deliberately to keep her dependent on you." For the first time, my mom didn't have a comeback. She just sat there, tears streaming down her face. Grandma turned to me next. Amber, I owe you an apology too. I should have been more present in your life. I let old conflicts keep me away, and you suffered for it. That night, they worked out a plan. I would finish my senior year living with Aunt Tricia. Mom would start therapy, real therapy, not some holistic coach, to work through her issues. We'd try family sessions together once her therapist thought she was ready. As I packed my things, Mom stood in my doorway looking lost. I really thought I was protecting you, she said quietly. I paused, a stack of t-shirts in my hands. I know you believe that, but Mom, you can't protect someone by controlling them. She nodded slowly. Your father really did leave because of my weight, you know. He said he wasn't attracted to me anymore after I gained the pregnancy weight. Then he was a jerk who didn't deserve you, I said firmly. But making me overweight wouldn't have protected me from jerks. It just would have made me miserable. For a moment, I saw clarity in her eyes, real understanding. I'm sorry, Amber. I really am. I wanted to believe her. Part of me did. But trust is like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can't just tape it back together and pretend not to see the cracks. When I carried my suitcases downstairs, Aunt Tricia was waiting. Grandma Margaret had already taken Mom for coffee to discuss next steps. As we loaded my stuff into Tricia's car, I felt this weird mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, hope, fear. You know, Aunt Tricia said as we pulled away from the only home I'd ever known, your mom isn't a monster. She's a person who never dealt with her own trauma and ended up passing it on. I watched my house disappear in the side mirror. Do you think she'll ever really change? Aunt Tricia sighed. I don't know, honey. But here's what I do know. You broke the cycle. You recognized what was happening and you fought back. That takes incredible strength. As we drove toward my new temporary home, I thought about everything that had happened. My mom had tried to make me into something I wasn't because of her own fears. She'd used food as a weapon, trust as a bargaining chip, but I hadn't let her win. I'd found my voice, built my strength, and stood up for myself. The road ahead was uncertain. Would Mom actually go to therapy? Would our relationship ever heal? Could I learn to trust her again? Those were tomorrow's problems. Today, I was just proud of myself for fighting back, for not becoming the pushover she thought she'd raised. Living with Aunt Tricia turned out to be exactly what I needed. Her house was smaller than ours, but it felt so much more open somehow. She worked as a real estate agent, so her schedule was flexible. The first night there, she sat me down with a notebook. House rules, she said. Number 1, you make your own food choices. I'll keep the kitchen stocked. You decide what to eat. Number 2, honesty. Always. If something's bothering you, we talk about it. Number 3, you're almost an adult, so I'll treat you like one. That means freedom, but also responsibility. It was like someone had lifted a 100-pound weight off my chest. For the first time in years, I could just exist. No food wars, no mind games, just normal teenage stuff like homework and college applications. Mom started therapy the following week. Her therapist recommended we have very limited contact for the first month while she worked through some of her issues. I was honestly relieved. I needed the space. When we finally did have our first supervised visit at her therapist's office, Mom looked different somehow. Smaller, less certain. She handed me a letter she'd written as part of her therapy. I don't expect forgiveness, she said quietly, but I want you to know I'm trying to understand what I did wrong. I took the letter but didn't read it right away. Some wounds need time before you can poke at them again. Meanwhile, my life was finally moving forward. I got accepted to 3 colleges, including my top choice with a partial scholarship. Aunt Tricia helped me apply for financial aid. For the first time, I felt like my future was actually mine to shape. By the time prom rolled around in May, I'd been living with Aunt Tricia for nearly 3 months. I hadn't planned on going until my friend Zoe insisted we go together as friends. We found these amazing vintage dresses at a thrift store and spent weeks altering them. The night of prom, I was getting ready when the doorbell rang. I heard Aunt Tricia answer it, followed by quiet conversation, then a knock on my bedroom door. Someone here to see you, Aunt Tricia said, looking slightly uncomfortable. I walked into the living room to find my mom standing there, holding a small gift bag. She looked nervous. I heard tonight was your prom, she said. I wanted to bring you this. Inside the bag was a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm shaped like a bird. It's a phoenix, she explained, rising from the ashes. I thought it suited you. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to reject the gift out of principle, but another part recognized that this was her trying, in her own way, to make amends. Thank you, I said, slipping it on my wrist. It's beautiful. You look beautiful, she replied, her voice cracking slightly. Healthy and strong and beautiful. We didn't hug. We weren't there yet, but as she turned to leave, she paused at the door. I'm proud of you, Amber. Not because of how you look, just because of who you are. As I watched her walk back to her car, I realized something important. My mom had tried to control my body because she couldn't control her pain. But in fighting for my autonomy, I'd gained something she never had, the strength to break generational patterns. I closed the door and went back to finish getting ready for prom, the phoenix charm catching the light as I moved. The battle with my mom wasn't completely over. Real healing would take time, honesty, and probably more therapy than either of us could imagine. But I'd won the most important fight already, the one for myself. Now I just needed to survive high school graduation, choose a college, and figure out how to navigate this strange new relationship with my mom. No pressure, right? Living with Aunt Tricia was amazing in ways I never expected. She worked weird hours as a real estate agent, but always made sure to check in with me. The weirdest part was how normal everything felt. She never commented on what I ate, didn't watch me during meals, and kept her promises about treating me like an adult. You need a ride to school tomorrow? She asked one morning while making coffee. I have an early showing but can drop you off first. Nah, Zoe's mom is picking me up, I said, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl, something I could do without thinking twice now. Perfect. Oh, and your mom's therapist called. They'd like to schedule another session next week if you're up for it. I hesitated. The last session had been awkward but not terrible. Mom mostly listened while I talked about how her food manipulation had affected me. She cried a lot. Yeah, I guess that's fine, I said, trying to sound casual even though my stomach instantly knotted up. Aunt Tricia must have noticed my expression. You don't have to go if you're not ready. No, it's okay. I think it's helping, I wasn't entirely sure if that was true, but I was trying. The next therapy session was different. Mom seemed calmer, less defensive. The therapist, Dr. Barnes, had us do this exercise where we took turns completing sentences like, I feel hurt when, and I need you to understand that. When it was Mom's turn, she looked directly at me and said, I feel terrified when I think about you leaving for college because I don't know who I am without being your mother. That hit me hard. In all my anger and hurt, I'd never really considered that she might be scared of losing me. Not just controlling me, but genuinely afraid of what would happen when I left. I need you to understand that I can still be your daughter without being under your control, I told her. Dr. Barnes nodded approvingly. That's exactly right, Amber. And Diane, your relationship with Amber doesn't end when she goes to college. It just changes form. After the session, Mom asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I almost said no out of habit, but decided to give it a shot. We sat at a small table by the window at this local cafe, both of us carefully sipping our drinks like they might explode. I've been doing a lot of work in therapy, she said finally, about your father and my parents and everything. I nodded, not sure what to say. I found some old pictures I thought you might want to see. She pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. Inside were photos I'd never seen before. My dad holding me as a baby, both of us laughing at the camera. Him pushing me on a tiny swing set. Mom and Dad together, his arm around her shoulder, both smiling. You told me he left when you were pregnant, I said, confused. Mom stared into her coffee. He did leave then, but he came back when you were about 6 months old. Stayed for almost a year before leaving for good. Why didn't you ever tell me? I was ashamed. I thought if you knew he'd chosen to leave after knowing you, it would hurt worse than thinking he left before. She wiped a tear. Plus, I was still so angry at him. I didn't want to share any good memories. I studied the photos again. There was definitely a resemblance around the eyes and chin. For years, I'd wondered what he looked like if I took after him. Is he still alive? I asked. As far as I know. Last I heard he was in California, remarried with stepkids. I slid the photos back into the envelope, not sure how to process this new information. Part of me wanted to be angry that she'd hidden this from me, but honestly, I was just tired of being angry. Thanks for showing me these, I said. I have more at home if you ever want to see them, and I'd understand if someday you wanted to try to contact him. That surprised me. The old mom would never have suggested that. The weeks leading up to graduation flew by. I got confirmation of my financial aid package for college. I'd be attending State University about 3 hours away. Close enough to visit, but far enough for real independence. The scholarship plus financial aid would cover most costs, and I could work part-time to handle the rest. Aunt Tricia helped me shop for dorm supplies, making a whole event out of it. You need one of these shower caddies, she insisted, tossing one into our cart, and decent towels. The ones in dorms are like sandpaper. Meanwhile, things with Mom remained complicated. We had coffee every couple of weeks. Sometimes it was okay, sometimes awkward. She slipped up occasionally, making comments about my appearance or what I was eating, but would catch herself and apologize. Progress, I guess. Graduation day arrived with perfect May weather. I put on my cap and gown at Aunt Tricia's house, nervous but excited. Mom had texted asking if she could come take pictures before the ceremony. I'd said yes, despite the butterflies in my stomach. When she arrived, she was carrying a small gift bag and looking uncharacteristically nervous. You look beautiful, honey, she said, and for once, it didn't sound loaded with hidden meaning. Thanks, Mom. I got you something. It's not much, but she handed me the bag. Inside was a leather-bound journal with my initials embossed on the cover. The first page had a handwritten note. For new beginnings and your own story. Love, Mom. I blinked back tears. It's perfect. Thank you. We took some photos in Aunt Tricia's backyard. Mom, Aunt Tricia, and me. Then just Mom and me. Then some silly ones where Aunt Tricia made us do poses like we were superheroes. At the ceremony, they sat together. It was weird seeing them side by side, but nice too. When they called my name to get my diploma, I heard both of them cheering. Afterward, we went out for a celebratory dinner at my favorite restaurant. No comments from Mom about carbs or portions or anything food-related. Just normal conversation about college plans and my friends' summer jobs. It felt almost normal. As we were finishing dessert, which Mom didn't pressure me to eat or avoid, she cleared her throat nervously. I've been talking with my therapist about what happens when you go to college, she said, and I wanted to run something by you. I tensed slightly, waiting for the control to resurface. I was thinking maybe I could come visit campus sometimes. Maybe once a month, we could have lunch or something. She rushed to add, only if you want, of course, and I'd always call first. I considered this. Monthly visits seemed reasonable. That might work. Let me get settled first though, okay? She nodded, looking relieved. Of course. And maybe you could come home for some weekends? When you want to? I mean, maybe, I said, not committing but not refusing either. Aunt Tricia jumped in. And my house is always open too. Anytime you need a break or just want to visit. I smiled, genuinely touched. Thanks, both of you. That summer passed in a blur of preparation. I worked at a local coffee shop to save up extra money, spent time with Zoe and my other friends, started running in the mornings, not to lose weight but because I actually enjoyed how it made me feel. Mom invited me over for dinner a few times. Her house, my old house, felt smaller somehow. She'd redecorated my old room, turning it into a home office but keeping some of my childhood stuff displayed on shelves. It wasn't as weird as I expected. One evening in late July, she asked if I could help her clean out the attic before I left for school. I agreed, curious about what we might find. The attic was dusty and hot despite the portable fan we set up. We started sorting through old boxes, Christmas decorations, winter clothes, random household items she'd forgotten about. Then I found a box labeled Diane High School. Inside were yearbooks, photos, and notebooks. I opened a yearbook from her senior year, finding her photo easily. She looked so different. Heavier, yes, but also sadder somehow. Nothing like the confident, thin woman who raised me. You can look through those if you want, she said, noticing what I'd found. Though I warn you, the fashion was terrible. I flipped through pages, finding pictures of her in band uniform, at prom with a guy who wasn't my dad, standing with friends by a locker, normal teenage stuff. Were you happy in high school? I asked. She sat down next to me, fanning herself with an old magazine. Sometimes, not often, kids were cruel about my weight, and Dad was worse. Grandpa? Yeah, he'd make these comments at dinner, joke about how I'd never find a husband if I didn't slim down. She shook her head. Mom would try these crazy diets on me. Grapefruit for breakfast, lunch, and dinner one week, cabbage soup the next. That sounds awful. It was. I promised myself when I had kids, I'd never do that. She gave a bitter laugh. Instead, I did the opposite. Kept you heavy so boys wouldn't notice you. So stupid. Why didn't you ever tell me all this? Pride, I guess. And shame. She pulled out another photo album. Here's your dad, when we first met. The picture showed a younger version of the man from the other photos. Tall, kind of lanky, with my same dark hair. He liked that I was curvy when we met, she said softly. Said it was more to love. Then after I got pregnant, he changed his tune. Started comparing me to thinner women. I studied the photos, trying to reconcile this information with the anger I'd felt toward my mom for so long. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it helped me understand it a little better. I really am sorry, Amber, she said, closing the album. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know I mean it. I messed up. I let my issues affect you in terrible ways. For the first time in months, I reached out and took her hand. I know, Mom. College move-in day arrived faster than I expected. Aunt Tricia insisted on driving me, with Mom following in her car. They helped carry boxes and bags to my tiny dorm room, arranged my bedding, hung curtains, and unpacked my mini fridge. Text me when you get settled, Aunt Tricia said, hugging me tightly before heading out to give me and Mom a moment alone. Mom stood awkwardly by the door, looking around the small room. It's nice, cozy. It's smaller than my closet at home, I joked. But it's yours. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. I'm so proud of you, Amber. Not just for college, but for everything. For standing up for yourself. For being stronger than I was. I swallowed hard. Thanks, Mom. I know things aren't perfect between us. They might never be. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. But I want you to know I'm working on it. Here's the name and number of my therapist. And I found a counseling center here on campus in case you ever want to talk to someone. I took the envelope, touched by the gesture. I appreciate that. One more thing. She handed me a credit card. Emergency only. And yes, I promise not to check the statements or track your purchases. Your business is your business. We hugged goodbye. A real hug without tension or hidden meanings. As I watched her walk away down the dorm hallway, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope. Not just for my future, but maybe for our relationship too. That night, my new roommate Madison and I went to a freshman mixer in the dorm lounge. People were grouped awkwardly around the snack table, everyone trying too hard to seem cool while secretly terrified of this new chapter. I grabbed a plate and put some chips and veggies on it without a second thought. No voice in my head calculating calories or worrying what someone would think. Just normal hunger and normal food. So where are you from? Madison asked as we found seats. About 3 hours north, I said. Small town, nothing exciting. Got any family drama? She joked. My parents are on their 3rd marriages each. Holiday scheduling is a nightmare. I laughed, thinking about how to answer. My mom and I had some issues, but we're working on it, I said finally. It's complicated. Isn't family always? She clinked her soda can against mine. Here's to fresh starts. To fresh starts, I agreed. Later that night, I opened my new journal and began to write. Not about my mom or the past, but about my first day of college. My hopes for the semester. The cute guy from the 3rd floor who'd helped me find the vending machines. The past would always be there. My relationship with my mom would take years to fully heal, if it ever did. But sitting in that dorm room, writing in a journal she had given me, I realized something important. My story wasn't just about what had happened to me. It was about what happened next. And for the first time in my life, I was the one holding the pen.